Hello, everybody. Welcome to VGWA World. I'm Cobretti.
And I'm Wally.
And come join us today for WrestleRank as we continue to play through and rank all the console wrestling video games. And in this episode, we're continuing our march to wrap up the 80s as we review Champion Wrestling, released on the PC Engine and Nintendo Switch.
But the Nintendo Switch wasn't in the 80s.
Nope, I refuse to do this again. The bit didn't work the first time.
What do you mean? People watched Matt Mania.
But that Matt Mania review was so boring that sometimes I put it on at night. Put myself asleep. If you had your normal television 4x3, right? Well, it was turned 90 degrees, so it was 3x4. For this episode of WrestleRank, we'll be looking at two different versions of Champion Wrestling. The arcade port for the Switch and the PC Engine release. And if at any time in this video you find Champion Wrestler an interesting video game that you would like to play, make sure to head over to archive.org, where we have provided scans and translations to the PC Engine manual. If you would like to support us in our archival efforts, all we ask is that you watch our videos. And if you end up enjoying our content, like and subscribe. It really does majorly help us as we continue to cover games that are mainstream and some of the lesser known games.
The game was released in 1989 to the arcades and was ported to the PC Engine in December of 1990.
Let's begin our conversation for this game by discussing the roster. The roster between the two games is exactly the same for playable characters.
While the PC Engine has one extra non-playable character, the boss, King the Brute.
And here at VGWA World, we like to give a special shout out to Shadow Master as part of the Critical Club Fire Pro community for giving us the extra information on Big Ben Howitzer, a unfinished character influenced by Big Van Vader that can be obtained by using cheat codes via emulation.
You know, this is kind of the 80s version of weird science hacking, isn't it?
So who are these 8 playable characters between the two versions? The wrestler roster consists of
Rocky Garner, based off of Stan Hansen.
Miracle Rastan, based off of Kerry Von Erich, even though I do get some Ultimate Warrior vibes from him.
Matterhorn Decker. He reminds me of the big Andre the Giant.
The Great Samurai, which marks another appearance from VGWA World favorite Ricky Choshu.
And Ricky the Dragon Steamboat, who didn't shake my hand either.
Also, the Great Samurai gets accompanied by a manager who looks like Mr. Fuji on his way to a ring, who only appears in the arcade version and will occasionally throw out a kendo stick.
Nitro Punk, the love child of two Road Warriors.
What a rush! Black Machine, modeled after influential wrestler Tiger Mask.
Jimmy Carbon, we think he's Jungle Boy.
Although his tights kind of remind me of Flying Brian Pillman. And Cobra Bloody Joe, marking another appearance for Tiger Jeet Singh, including his manager, who reminds me a lot of Slick, accompanying him to the ring in both the arcade and PC Engine version of this video game.
And if you make it to the final boss, who is a non-playable character, you get the King Brute, who reminds me of Bruiser Brody.
Alright, Wally, let's hop right in, play some matches, and talk about the gameplay between the two versions of the game. The gameplay mechanic for this video game is one of the more unique features for a wrestling video game.
I'm always for unique, but unique doesn't always mean it's better. First, let's get this out of the way. This is a button mashing game. You will mash and mash and mash and mash and mash.
But what separates this video game from other button mashers is that it's not just simply button mashing, you also have to toggle the D-pad in the various directions very quickly to build up the power to execute your moves.
I have the power!
I'll beat you, M. Decker! Yeah!
One big difference between the PC Engine and the arcade version is the arcade had a joystick. That is a lot easier to wiggle around. You gotta use a D-pad, that hurts the thumb a little.
So remember, make sure to like and subscribe so we can get monetized and business expense that joystick to save Wally's thumbs. you greedy bastard.
And this cheap plug was Mick Foley approved. Not really.
Although the two games play very similar, I prefer the gameplay version of the Switch arcade port.
I get it, the Switch is more modern, but the response of the controls were so much better compared to the PC Engine.
In addition to the response time, what also gives the Nintendo Switch version an advantage is that I think the collision detection was much better on the Switch version as opposed to the PC Engine.
I'm not picking on any other modern video games that have collision detection problems, but you know who you are. I will say this, with only having 2 buttons, you're able to perform multiple moves utilizing the D-pad. In essence, you have 6 total buttons that will allow your character to perform a wide variety of moves.
But in general, I do think that we are both in agreement that the gameplay goes to the arcade port version on the Switch. So let's move on to the gameplay modes available on the 2 versions. Each version have their own unique gameplay modes in addition to their similarities. Both each have their pros and cons. For example, let's take the arcade version. By the time you get to match 3, you're introduced to a cage match.
And there's nothing more satisfying than a giant Cesaro swing into a cage.
And then in the PC Engine version, you have the ability to play with 4 players in a tag team versus tag team match.
Well, that's great if we had 4 friends.
Or 2.
Since I'm a huge fan of couch co-op, the 2-player couch co-op was a blast to do. But I could only imagine how intense and awesome the 4-player couch co-op would be.
Other than these 2 modes, the other gameplay options between the 2 versions are the same, where you could have 1 player versus 2 player, 1 player versus the computer, or be a tag team with 1 player and 2 player versus the computer tag team partners.
One thing that this game has that is great is you could play co-op or competitive. Unlike the last arcade game we played, and I'm talking about you, Matt Mania.
When comparing the gameplay options between the 2 games, I'm going to have to give the nod to the Switch version of this video game.
I like whichever one I don't have to play against the computer because I lose all the time. So, you want to play, Cobretti?
Cobretti, come and play!
So, Cobretti, let's talk about the 2 things that we both cared about the most when we were kids. Graphics and sound.
To nobody's surprise, the Switch arcade port had both superior graphics and sound, as opposed to the PC Engine version of this game.
Of course, the arcade version is going to look better than the PC Engine. We get that. But the game does look and sound better than the other arcade that we reviewed that I hope all of you have watched, Matt Mania.
But remember, Matt Mania was released in 1985, and this game was released 5 years later, in 1989. During this time period, the graphics and the sound in arcades had grown leaps and bounds beyond 1984. And when comparing Champion Wrestler to other arcade standouts of that year, such as Final Fight and Golden Axe, I'm not sure how well Champion Wrestler actually would hold up.
Though I was a huge wrestling fan even back in the olden days, if I saw this game in the arcade, I would walk by it.
Me too, because I'm not gonna lie, I did love me some Golden Axe back then. But I don't want to leave this on a sour note. While the graphics and audio may not have been state-of-the-art whenever it was released, this game had it where it counted, in the gameplay. And it was insanely fun as a 2-player game. As the arcade version, not the PC engine.
Here at VGWA World, we do recognize that there are some of you out there that really love this game on the PC Engine. But it's no Fire Pro. And the Switch version is a superior game. We do understand those of you who are PC Engine fans really love this game. But when the game was released, you really couldn't bring the arcade cabinet home.
And for a mere $8, you can bring that arcade experience home on the Switch. A version which we feel has better match modes, controls, audio, and graphics.
The only way this would be better if it had Ahmed Johnson, Hall of Fame 2024.
So now we got into the point where we need to rate this game. And for our rating, we're going to be looking at the Switch version. For me, I give this game a good rating.
Well, you know, it's very rare Cobretti and I are on the same page. And well, this time we are. I give this game a good rating as well.
And now the moment has come upon us to rank this video game. Wally, where would you put this game? I think we are both in agreement that this game falls above the Kinnikuman line.
We get no compensation for mentioning anything of Kinnikuman. As an arcade port, I think Cobretti and I both can agree that this goes above Mat Mania.
I'm in 100% agreement with that as well. While this game is better than Mat Mania, the real question I think needs to be asked is if this game is better than Superstar Pro Wrestling.
Hell yes, it's better than Superstar Pro Wrestling.
What? You at least get to play as Vader in Superstar Pro Wrestling.
Okay, I get it. The roster is impressive for Superstar Pro Wrestling. But all in all aside, the wrestlers are just like famous wrestlers in Champion Wrestler. The game has better graphics. The game has better controls. The game isn't going to torture you for trying to play. What can I say? It's a better game.
Damn! Point taken.
So, I have one even better than this. This is even better than Tag Team.
For shame! Do you not have any love for Scorpion Deathlocks, Brainbusters, and Ensiguris anymore?
You know I love wrestling. But here's the thing. This game again has better graphics, has more co-op, couch co-op, competitive co-op, and you can play up to 4 people on the PC Engine. You have 8 wrestlers you can play with. And also, there's no bullshit beast mode.
There is a beast mode in Champion Wrestler. At least in Tag Team Wrestler, they had the decency to make the wrestler red, so you knew that they were in beast mode.
Very good point, Cobretti. But what is your obsession with these broken leg runners? Dear God, they look so mixed-matched. They don't fit. But the other side is the audio is really good in Champion Wrestler.
I feel like this is a personal attack against me, and I'm turning you into HR. If we had one. And what about that badass intro music to Tag Team Wrestling?
First off, I can tell this is personal because we're using 30 words. Secondly, you're right, that is probably one of the best intro songs that I've heard too in a video game. But again, it's about the fun of the game. Champion Wrestler has some of the best gameplay we've played as a co-op. You know I love couch co-op. I love whenever you, well, win, I guess. But the best part about the game is we have options. Tag Team has one option. You play the same 2 guys over and over and over and over.
Nope, still not happening. You still haven't sold me on this game yet.
But they're slick in the game.
Oh, alright. You got me. Champion Wrestler. A better game than Tag Team Wrestling.
And there you go, folks. Champion Wrestler above Tag Team. And take that, Cobretti.
So thank you everybody for joining us today, and make sure to join us next time as we wrap up the 80s with a surprise game as we take a look for UWC, the unreleased prototype video game for the Nintendo Entertainment System.